Coming up on today's show, Rivian's IPO happens and raises a lot of money. NorthVolt debuts the first recycled battery in the world, 100% recycled. It's pretty cool. And Lordstown says its pickup truck's not coming until almost the end of next year. These stories and more coming next. Welcome to a special episode of Transport Evolved News. As you can tell, we're not in the studio, we are in fact on the road. That is because everybody on the team has been driving all the way down to San Diego and back again in 2 different electric cars. More on that in a moment. But first, a shout out. This show is brought to you by the Electric Auto Association. Stick around until the end of the show to find out how joining the EAA can help you finance your own clean energy or transportation purchase. Welcome Winter and welcome Kate to a special edition of T.E.N.
My first T.E.N. appearance.
Yes.
And mine, actually.
It's very exciting.
It's very weird because normally we do 10 with green screen and I'm up really late swearing at the computer and working until 1 or 2 in the morning and wishing we had a video editor, which brings us to the point where you need to make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, and don't forget to support us through Patreon because we do have a new video editor coming and he'd like to eat.
Yeah, and we have produced a lot of content the last 5 days for him to edit. So he's got a lot of work ahead of him, and it would be really nice if he could get paid for it.
And live long enough to edit it, because otherwise, without support, yeah.
So we've been doing a long distance road trip this week. We've been going all the way from Portland, Oregon to San Diego, and we are almost back in Portland now. We're actually only about 300 miles from the Transport Evolved studio, but we arrived here in Medford, Oregon last night at very late.
Effectively, it was midnight.
Yeah, it was basically this morning.
And we've been driving through fog. We've been driving a Tesla Model 3 long-range rear-wheel drive, which is your husband's car.
Yes, who very generously lent it to me while driving my objectively awful Think City for a week.
And we've been driving a Ford Mustang Mach-E GT.
Which is now my car. Ford, it's mine.
Yeah, we haven't told Ford yet.
Well, if we want this to go out today, I'm probably going to be editing this on the road. Just a bit of housekeeping. We're not going to have any B-roll for this video because while we do have B-roll, it's really difficult to edit while you're driving along. And the next couple of weeks worth of 10s are going to be a bit different, but we wanted to give you a real roundup. So let's get started. We start with the Rivian IPO. We cannot start anywhere else.
The Rivian IPO.
Tell everybody what happened.
Well, Rivian did an IPO, which is huge props to Rivian. They didn't do a SPAC, they did a proper IPO with proper disclosure. And I believe by the end of the first day of trading, Rivian was valued at about $100 billion, which, if I'm not mistaken, means that the market thinks it's worth about as much as, say, Ford. And I think it's fabulous to see electric automakers, especially innovative ones, and I think Rivian's doing some very cool stuff, opening big, but I will admit that I have a bit of a hard time with this valuation. For a company that's delivered a handful of very, very, very good trucks, but a handful, to have this market valuation has me feeling like, I don't know. I'm very happy for Rivian, I'm very happy for Rivian's investors. I'm a little concerned what this says about the market.
We've been saying for a long time, haven't we, Kate, that there's a bubble on the way?
Yes, we have, and I'm pretty concerned about what's going to happen when that bubble pops, which they always invariably do.
But, good news, this company is now worth 5 million?
Well, our company?
Yeah.
No. If Rivian's worth 100 billion, I think it's safe to say we're worth at least 500, 600 million.
Great. So we should float. Maybe we should find a SPAC.
Yeah, well, we'll be launching a SPAC very soon.
Absolutely.
Staying with the stock market and prices, Elon Musk made a cool 10 billion this week. Or 5 billion. 5 billion. Was it 5 billion?
5 billion, I believe.
Yes.
I mean, did he, or did his somewhat imaginary numbers go up some? I mean, yes, he did. If we're reporting factually, yes, he made $5 billion, but it does feel a little moving imaginary board pieces, because his wealth increased because the company's value continues to increase.
So Elon Musk ran a Twitter poll this week in which he said, should I sell off 10% of my stock? I think that's what it was.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that he'd already said last year that he was going to sell off about 10% of his stock.
Spin. I mean, you got to give the guy kudos for that. He's very good at spin.
He is. He's certainly, he is good at messaging sort of the message that he wants. I don't know that he's always great at messaging on behalf of Tesla, but he's always very good at messaging on behalf of Elon Musk.
And obviously, you know, that most of that money, I think Elon had hinted would go to pay taxes. Is that what I understand it to be?
That is the way that he expressed it on the poll.
Because if he cashes out to the market, he's going to have to pay cap gains on everything. And because Elon's value has gone from like 30 billion a year or two ago to 330 billion now, there is going to be a lot of cap gains on that.
I think he can afford it.
Oh, I'm sure he can.
All right, so let's stick with a Tesla story coming up next. This is an interesting one. So Tesla's EV market share in the US has fallen, but don't worry, I'm going to put you know I'm all about context.
I know.
So the context here is that the US EV market is less dominated in terms of new car sales by Tesla than it once was as a total percentage of the overall market, but the market has grown.
Yeah,
and Tesla is now outselling luxury brands like Mercedes-Benz. So it's somebody's moved the goalposts, basically.
So, okay, here's the thing. I think that we are getting very close. I don't think we're actually there yet, but I think we're getting very close to the time when we're going to stop talking about the EV market distinct from the automotive market. Because yes, Tesla's EV market share has fallen. It was almost impossible for it to do anything else because at one time it had almost the entire EV market share. But Tesla's percentage of the automotive market as a whole in the US has grown. And that to me is the more interesting story because adoption of EVs is growing.
But other brands have also grown.
And other brands have also grown. And it is awesome to see that I could not be happier that Tesla's market share in the US of the EV market is shrinking because it means that other companies are selling their EVs, and that's fabulous. We need more EVs from more manufacturers on the road. It can't just be Tesla.
So Tesla was at over 70% market share last year in the US. I'm trying to bring up the graphic here and I'm failing miserably. It was at over 70% last year. Now it is, let's have a look here. See if I can zoom in. And my computer is not playing. This is what happens when you film something on a short order. It was 79.5% last year, and now it's down to 66.4%. Interesting, the companies that have kind of snapped into that space. We've seen Chevrolet, interestingly.
Well, the Bolt and the Bolt EUV were very popular.
Yeah, that's true. Earlier this year, they absolutely were. The revised Bolt and Bolt EUV were
particularly with the offers as they were at the time.
But Chevy was fire sailing the pre-refresh Bolts because the refresh Bolts got the new interior and the new fascia and I think a tiny bit more range and the Bolt EUV. So dealers who still had the old model Bolts were absolutely giving them away for a bit.
Yeah. Interestingly, in terms of that market share, Ford has just basically jumped in. Mm-hmm. Last year, its share was negligible. This year, it's 5.2%. And I think that shows a testament to what Ford's been doing with its electric vehicle.
With one car.
That's one car. Yeah. It's going to be joined this year by the Transit, the e-Transit, which reportedly is sold out. But again, from context point of view, sold out doesn't necessarily mean it's a huge volume of vehicles. It just means that all of the vehicles that Ford planned to make in that year have been sold out. Yeah. So let's move on.
And real quick, where was VW in that? I'm just curious.
Let's have a quick look. Volkswagen doesn't actually seem to. It doesn't seem to be. I would estimate it's slightly less than Ford. Maybe.
But in America, again, only one vehicle.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Kia EV9 concept teased ahead of the LA Auto Show. We're not going to the LA Auto Show. What do you think?
It's another big SUV.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge market, so I get why they're doing that.
So EV9, obviously, I wish we've talked about naming conventions before.
Telluride, isn't it? That sort of size.
Yeah.
The thing that stood out to me is that, from what I remember, is that it looks like Kia and Hyundai are keeping a pretty close design language between their, like the EV9, you can see EV6 in it, just like Hyundai, I think, teased a concept. I was like, oh, I can totally see the Ioniq 5 in that. I think they're
that's
very
not
much
new, is it?
Well, but it's interesting that they're very much deciding on and sticking to a design language that is their EV brand design language as distinct from their petrol design language.
Or their hydrogen, which is a bit...
Their hydrogen design language is mainly the same as their gas design language. Unless they've changed.
I wasn't that impressed by it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about another big story this week. The first 100% recycled battery from NorthVolt. So for those who don't know, NorthVolt is a big battery specialist. They recycle batteries. They also produce batteries. The first 100% recycled material battery. That is huge news. 100% using nickel, manganese, and cobalt. Cobalt obviously is source of great pains when it comes to ethical sourcing of cobalt. If you haven't watched Kate's video on cobalt mining and blockchain, we will try and remember to link to it below, which normally means that it will appear next week in the video.
Yeah.
Because we're all operating on about 6 hours sleep every night for the last week.
You got 6 hours sleep the last few nights. That's more than I've been getting. Yeah. So the thing that I think is really interesting in this story is that, I don't know if people know this, but automobiles are some of the most recycled of all consumer products. A huge percentage of a car at the end of its lifespan is recycled. And we see a lot of concerns in the comments in our videos, some more concern trolley than others, about the future of battery waste. And the fact that even as the EV market is growing, is still really in some ways in its infancy, that we already are really aggressively looking at battery recycling, which it's not entirely environmentally motivated, it's also financially motivated. It's cheaper to recycle than to mine fresh. But it is really, really, really heartening to see.
It is, and I've very much enjoyed the conversations that a lot of automakers have been having about circular economy and the fact that we can't just toss these things away. And we've also had that evidence that came out recently that shows that recycled batteries are as good as a new battery.
Yeah. And obviously, you don't get 100% of the recycled materials out of a battery. That was very, very difficult to do. But you can use 100% of those recycled materials, the materials you actually manage to recycle. If you can process them properly, you can then reuse them to build a battery that is 100% recycled. And unlike toilet paper, which, recycled blue paper is never as good as the first time round.
That went in a different place than I was thinking, so I'm relieved, so to speak.
The batteries are going to be good. Now, I should point out, I did say I thought it was the first in the world. I'm sure someone will tell me different, so if I'm wrong, please tell me. But as far as I'm aware, it's the world's first 100% commercial potential for commercial production of 100% recycled materials in an EV battery, and that is huge. And expect NorthVolt to really, really do some amazing things, because it's talking about 125,000 tons of battery materials recycled per year. And right now, I don't think we're making that amount of battery waste.
I mean, that's what's interesting, is that they are very much aware that they need to be ramped up for a future that's not here yet. Because the reality is that most EV batteries that have been produced ever are still on the road. My car's 10 years old and its battery's still going.
Even if it has 40 miles of range.
It didn't start with all that many to begin with.
But my old iMe, that is still on the road, and as I understand, it still has like 50 or 50-ish miles of range, which is about 80%.
Owned by a viewer of the channel, so
yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Hope it's doing well. So, all right, let's move on. Now, this is a rumour, and I'm going to have to be careful about what I say here. There are talks of Porsche bringing a more powerful Taycan to market that we might see in LA. There have been rumours.
Are they talking about more powerful than what, like?
A GTS.
So, I mean, if you think about a Porsche GTS, that's actually not typically about, like, the Porsche the Porsche GT3, things like that, it's often not about more power, but about lightening in, stripping things out and lightening them up as much as it's about tweaking the powertrain.
So Electrek are claiming that there's going to be a GTS and a Sport Turismo GTS.
I mean, I would much rather see a more everyday car, but at the same time, there is definitely a place for Halo track cars. And I still hear from people all the time that the problem with EVs are that they're slow and boring. So as long as, if Porsche wants to keep putting out fast and fun cars, and if Tesla wants to keep putting out fast and fun cars, I'm going to continue believing there's a place for them. And as an automotive enthusiast, I like the idea. I think it's very cool. I kind of would rather, if Porsche's going to do this, I'd kind of rather a 911 sort of form factor instead of the Taycan form factor, but we'll see what happens.
It would be difficult to get that many batteries in the cooling system. The Taycan cooling system is legendary. And I think a lot of people do criticize the Taycan's cooling system for being too complicated, but you know what? It means it can go around the track. And I've been around a track in a Taycan driven by a race driver. And it's just phenomenal what that car is capable of. It just sticks to the road like it's on rails.
Well, it's got very low centre of gravity.
Don't worry, I'm sure I can get you in a Taycan at some point soon, Winter.
That would be nice.
Kate, we have a new car that's joining us on the marketplace soon. It's called the Sun Earth or Solterra.
Oh, the Solterra.
Which I all week have been calling the Sontaran.
Yes.
And now I want it to be advertised by a thick-necked, slightly Welsh-sounding alien, which I think would be more fun for the advertising campaign.
It would, but it wouldn't really fit in with Subby's normal kind of advertising campaign.
So Subaru, as you know, has not really been into EVs at all, although in the 1990s Subaru did make an EV.
And they have made plug-ins of some sort.
And Winter's eyebrows just went up because he's like, really? Oh, yeah.
I did not
Subaru made an electric car in the late 90s, early noughties in Japan, about the same time that Toyota was making the RAV4, first-gen RAV4 EV. And of course, Toyota and Subaru have been technology partners, I think that's what they call it, for a while. And so all of the hybrid technology that Subaru has is basically Toyota's hybrid synergy drive. There are plug-in hybrid Subis out there that have basically the plug-in Prius drivetrain or the Prius Prime drivetrain.
I mean, the Subaru, the Toyota, is it the BZ and the Subaru FR with the sport cars were basically the same car with slightly different sheet metal.
Yeah, and the Solterra is basically a BZ4X. That's how Toyota wants it to be called.
That's disappointing for them because I will almost invariably call it the BZ4X.
Yeah.
Can I just interject for a moment and say that while I don't love the name Solterra, I think it is so much better than BZ4X as a model name. I know Toyota model names have, we had the RAV4 and stuff, but it's just, why would you sell a car with a name like that?
It's kind of funny because Toyota up to this point has been really pretentious with its naming, right? Prius, which, and then it had, obviously it had the
Avalon.
Oh yes, the Avalon.
It's just been a bit pretentious with its names, but Mirai is the real one. The Before, the Toyota Before.
Well, and this is the Before Z whatever.
BZ4X.
Yeah.
It's that. I mean, it's almost like Toyota is looking at that car like it's like a computer.
Well,
rather than a car that
it's a Sinclair.
Yes.
It feels like a car that was in development and had an internal development name, and then they just never bothered to give it a real name for it went to market. And the thing is, I truly hope that it's brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to driving the Solterra / Toyota thing. I really am, and I'm hoping they're great, because I know lots of people who would really like an EV and would trust those brands. I just think the name is awful.
I'm going to say the Solterra is going to sell well. Particularly in the Pacific Northwest, where Subaru have a really big share of the market.
And Vermont. I can imagine it'd do very well in Vermont, as someone who used to live in Vermont.
people are like, this is my outdoorsy car that says I'm an outdoorsy person, but it's electric.
I in fact owned a Subaru in Vermont, but stylistically, it doesn't look like a unique Subaru or Toyota product. It looks like it has bits from the things. The front end is Ford Mustang Mach-E. The side profile's very sort of Hyundai Kona meets Polestar 2. I'm a little disappointed with what we've seen so far, but I cannot wait to get behind the wheel.
So we're talking about 329 miles or 530 kilometers on the WLTC standard, which is a Japanese test standard, which is even more convoluted than everyone else's. The Verge are claiming that they're guessing an EPA rating of 286 miles, which is 460 kilometers real world. I'm going to go even less than that. I'm going to say I think it'll get 260 because it's only got a 71 kilowatt hour battery pack, if memory serves correct.
Yeah.
71.4 kilowatt hour battery pack.
Do we know anything about its charging?
I think it's going to have 150 kilowatts. Let me double check that. It's going to get V to H or V to X.
I mean, the Japanese brands seem very... That makes sense for a Japanese brand to have that. Because
because earthquakes.
Well, and because the CHAdeMO standard had it. Although this is going to be a CCS car, correct?
I believe it'll be CCS in most of the world.
Yeah, right. And it'll be CHAdeMO in Japan, I'm sure.
I'm sure it will be CHAdeMO in Japan. And,
That's going to be interesting because they'll need different sheet metal for it.
Yeah, but they've done it with other cars. We've seen that with other car makers.
All right. Tesla has yet again pushed prices up of Model Y.
Yeah.
And so we were joking that maybe we should have a stock ticker.
Yeah.
Well, more of like
price
this week in Tesla pricing, because it does feel like almost every 10 we cover a price increase.
We have for the last 2 weeks.
Now, in the Tesla community, because I follow a number of Tesla forums, there is a very significant percentage of people who think that the prices on Teslas will go back down again once the chip crunch and supply chain issues become relaxed. I personally don't think that's the case. There's another cadre of people who think that Tesla's been steadily increasing its prices in order to offset what people will be getting if a new tax credit goes through. And I suspect that it is a complicated situation. I think Tesla has huge demand, and I think they know that I think they will just keep raising prices as long as people keep clicking buy, because they're pricing for what the market will bear.
That is the capitalist way. You price to the market, and they have huge demand, so they can keep increasing their prices until they stop seeing that demand.
I think we need to call out companies that start increasing prices because of tax credits, because they're not making EVs any cheaper. That's the reality.
Yeah.
They're capping in on the incentives. All right.
Before we move on, we should just acknowledge once again that EV tax credits as a system only benefits people who have a high enough tax base to get money back.
I got in a real argument with Alex Guberman probably about 6 months ago, where he said, everybody is eligible for an EV tax credit. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Yeah, no. You have to have a liability.
Yeah, you have to tax liability enough for it to be
offsettable.
Yes.
And the American incentive system is really screwed up.
It is very heavily skewed towards the middle class.
Yeah, I mean,
and rich.
I've put solar panels on my house this year. I'm going to be able to claim back nearly 10 grand of solar panel tax credits because I put solar panels on my roof. I have a good credit rating, so I was able to get a loan to pay for those panels. And because of our combined household income, we've got a liability that's larger than that figure. So we'll be able to get money back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's thoroughly unfair. I think I would just love to see funding go to the actual point of purchase of those things.
And on a state-by-state basis, you do see that. So.
My understanding is that the wording of the bill, as I last saw it, which was quite a while ago, was that the rebate would be applied at the point of sale now, which is a huge step forward, but it still doesn't work if you don't have enough tax liability at the end of the year when you suddenly go, oh.
Yeah. So talking about Tesla, I have a question for you, Kate. What would you do if you went to buy a new dishwasher, which I've just had to do, because my Samsung dishwasher broke and Samsung wouldn't repair it because the repairman was dishonest. You bought a dishwasher.
You're not unhappy about that?
No,
I'm
not at
not
all.
unhappy about it, nor am I unhappy about the fact that Samsung's TVs now advertise things to me in my home, and I pay for services that do not have adverts on them, and now I'm gonna have to go home and get out my Raspberry Pi and put special software on it called Pi-hole that is basically an ad blocker for my entire network. I'm not bitter about that at all. But just imagine that you were buying a dishwasher, you got it home and it had no racks in it.
I would be displeased. I would be calling them and saying, I want my racks right now, or you can take this back.
Right, so Winter, why is it that Tesla can now ship cars missing bits?
Okay, so I understand we're all salty about this, but here's the thing. My problem with this isn't the Tesla shipped a car missing bits. So for people who don't know, or buyers of Tesla Model 3s have been reporting online that they're getting cars without their front USB-Cs and without the inductive charging pad operational. And when people have called Tesla, Tesla has said, yeah, we're out of chips. We're out of chips for the USB-Cs, so we just didn't put them in. We'll be getting chips in the not so distant future. When they come in, you should be able to bring the car in and get it retrofit with the parts. I don't actually have a huge problem with that. What I have an enormous problem with is that these people were not informed of this when they took possession of their cars. This is a feature that Tesla has advertised and said, your car comes with these USB-C ports, your car comes with inductive charging. They took delivery of the car, and at no point in the process did anyone say, oh, by the way, those bits don't work, or those bits aren't there. Instead, they waited until the customer noticed and then called Tesla and said, what's going on here? That, to me, is the big problem. We've seen other automakers ship cars thanks to the chip shortage with bits not working, at least temporarily, and then fix them, to meet spec when those parts came in. But the fact that Tesla didn't communicate this is at once unbelievably Tesla-like and also, I think, utterly unacceptable.
What do you think, Kate?
I think I agree with you. I think that we've seen other automakers do the same thing, but they inform customers ahead of time. And it is more concerning because when you get that car and you realise that this bit is missing, then that leads to what else is missing on this car that they haven't told me about, and will I discover later?
So to be fair, Ford recently got my attention. A Ford customer had a car. It was a Mustang Mach-E GT. Came from Mexico and it arrived and it didn't have the foot switch for the tailgate, the auto tailgate. The customer didn't notify Ford in enough time and Ford basically said, sucks to be you. So it's not just Tesla doing this, but I think it's abysmal, and I think it reiterates, if you are taking ownership of a car, you need to go round it with a fine-tooth comb. Do not let the sales team pressure you to drive off. Do not sign it until you've actually examined the car from head to toe to make sure it's good. Because pre-delivery inspections are a thing, but in the age of COVID, they seem to not be.
Yeah.
And
in fairness, every Tesla forum that I've been on, people have said, you have to be unbelievably thorough during your delivery process.
Well, and to also be fair, and this was a very long time ago, but I did do work experience in a garage, and the pre-delivery inspection that they did involve fixing things with zip ties.
So Senator Joe Manchin has been causing problems again for the EV tax credits. Namely, he says they are wrong and not American.
I would say it's very American as it stands. If you build your car in America, you get bonus extra cash.
But he said he wasn't going to, have a problem with the Build Back Better bill, and now he does, and it's to do with EV credits, and I'm sure he'll find some other reason. But for those who are watching and wanting EV tax credits to happen for EVs and think they might have already happened, they haven't.
Yeah, they're part of the reconciliation bill.
AKA the Build Back Better.
The bill, yes.
I have thoughts, but I feel like if I share my thoughts, we could be demonetized, so I'll just keep my mouth shut.
All right, so let's talk about the fact that GM Defense is going electric with a Hummer. Now, I'm not a big fan of the military. Obviously, it was Veterans Day this week, though, so thank you if you have served in the military. Thank you for your sacrifice, and thank you for the hard work that you put in to keep your country safe and the world safe.
But we would love it if we didn't need militaries, because it would be nice if we'd reached a point where we could solve problems without just killing each other. That would be spiffy.
There is a very big difference between not being a fan of having lots of wars and not being a fan of people providing that service and trying to look after the people of their country.
Exactly. GM Defence is going electric with a Hummer-based military vehicle.
Sigh.
I think it's actually probably a good thing. I'd rather do that than hydrogen. I mean,
so I think it's a good thing in the fact that, like, military Hummers get terrible gas mileage and emit huge plumes of, of unhealthy fossil fuel emissions. I'm a little concerned about greenwashing, military greenwashing. I'm also a little concerned about the impact on the consumer EV market of so many batteries. I mean, Hummers use so many batteries. You could battery 2.5 Tesla Model 3s for one Hummer battery. And that worries me a little bit, that the military has so much money to throw around that it's going to soak up all the battery supply.
but let's be honest. What we all want is smaller, affordable EVs, and that's not happening. So, which brings us to COP26. Basically, if you're rich, you're good. If you're not, you're screwed.
Well, you're not good, because at some point you're going to have to leave on Jeff Bezos's charmingly delightful rocket, because the planet's going to be uninhabitable.
Look, it's either Elon to Mars or Jeff Bezos's penis. So
I was avoiding saying that for monetization purposes, but sure.
So, I mean... No, I had thoughts and they're just...
I mean, this is very much as it stands, kind of a Rio summit thing. Everything's fixed, just carry on, but everything is not fixed, and we are looking at a very severe need to cut our carbon emissions in 2 decades, because we'll have no carbon budget and the planet will be 2 degrees warmer.
In 2 decades, those people who are at the summit are all going to be retired. We are going to be 60. We're going to be in our 60s.
Yes.
And my wife will nearly be 70.
Yeah, I mean, that's more, rather than just about being rich, one of my big takeaways is that the problem is that the people who have the power are old enough that they don't give a crap what happens by like 2050, 2060. Do we want to talk about the 2040 thing and the problem of fleets?
Yeah, so they've announced that various countries have signed on to make their fleets all electric for new vehicles by 2040, or at 2040.
Which means that when I die, there will still be petrol cars, likely in a majority on the roads. So I don't want to be a nihilist about it, but it feels like everything feels a bit pointless in that agreement. It does feel like, we're having to change the direction of an aircraft carrier with a rowboat, which is impossible. I suppose a little bit of hope is the fact that if you could theoretically attach enough rowboats to an aircraft carrier, you could make it change direction. But that's kind of how climate change feels right now. And it really upsets me, because I was 11 when my life was changed forever, and I'm not being dramatic here, by climate change. Yeah. It's the reason why Transport Evolved exists. The marshland that my father was paid to look after cows on flooded under 8 to 10 feet of water. It was a freshwater marshland, salt water got on it, it killed all the grass, and he lost his job, and we had to move. And my life was never the same again. I went from having a really lovely childhood to having a particularly not very nice one. And it was that moment. And that's why I do what I do today. And so I suppose that's how I feel about the whole COP26 agreement. I'm sure lots of people watching feel the same way. Let's head towards the end here and try and wrap a couple of quickies in. An interesting, exciting one. There's a Taycan that's been spied testing on a Tesla Supercharger.
Where?
In Europe.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. That is exciting.
270 kilowatts is the maximum charge rate on a V3. That would be very cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to preempt our road trip video, but on our road trip video, while one car has done better than others in some areas, and another car has done better than the other in others, I think we're all in agreement that the Tesla Supercharger network, because of its sheer speed, is easier to use and faster. And the video that I asked you to do a couple of weeks ago about Tesla Superchargers, I think it's proving the point. And on the trip, we kept running into superchargers that had 2 stalls out of order. And so we think...
Yeah, we keep in the San Francisco Bay Area, almost all the 250 supercharger stations have 2 stalls down, and my pet theory is that those stalls are going to be getting CCS heads. That's what I'm really wondering. But the supercharger network has performed brilliantly for us this trip.
It has.
And there will be jokes about the other networks that we've used, because I've had no problems and you've had plenty. So Rivian is talking about having 1 million vehicles a year by 2030, which I think is achievable, especially after its massive IPO. And finally, sticking with pickups, a pickup truck company that everyone has been telling us in the comments is already in production, is starting production, already delivered.
Has delivered trucks.
Has now said, yeah, we're not starting production until Q3 2022. So I don't know who's been commenting in our our Discord, on our Twitter, on our YouTube. We've had to ban some people because they were basically spouting lies.
Well, we had some people got really abusive, really personally abusive about the fact that we were reporting facts about this particular company.
And we're of course talking about Lordstown.
We're of course talking about Lordstown, who once again have delayed production of their pickup truck.
Lordstown is now going to sell its factory to Foxconn and says Foxconn will start producing vehicles next year. But here's the thing. This time next year, the F-150 Lightning will be in moderate volume production. We're expecting Chevrolet to be getting ready with its Silverado EV. It will already have unveiled it at CES. People will already be putting orders in. Tesla Cybertruck may or may not be in production. Rivian is already in production. Again, we said it would be first to market. We got a lot of criticism from people for saying it would be first to market. And we were right.
We were right on Rivian.
And I'm sorry to say that between us, we've got 40 years in this industry. And when you've been working in the industry for as many years combined as we have, you get to know which companies are BS and which companies are not.
Which companies produce more press releases than products?
And which ones have got a weird olfactory odor around them.
Mm-hmm. And look, we would all love to see Lordstown succeed. We absolutely would. Pickup trucks as a whole contribute enormously to fossil fuel emissions compared to Toyota Corollas. It would be great to have more choice in the market. Lordstown is doing some things that are different and innovative compared to other companies. We would love to see them succeed. If Lordstown, shoot me a note. I would love to get behind the wheel of your truck.
We all would.
We all would. But we're just not seeing things that are reassuring about this company's future. And I will say personally, when I found out that Foxconn was buying the factory, it did not reassure me, because Foxconn does not have a good track record of buying factories in America or building factories in America to produce products and then actually, producing products.
Well, let's put it like this. Every time that we got a press release from Lordstown, we would reach out and say, do you have a statement? Do you have a truck we can come and view?
Yeah.
Not a single journalist I know has gone to see it. And if you think about the number of people who've gone to see the Hummer EV, who've gone to see the F-150, we haven't seen either yet, but GM, Ford, if you want to invite us, we'll be up to.
But we definitely know people have, and YouTube is full of videos of other auto journalists who've gotten to at least get in and around those trucks, even if they haven't driven them.
When a company doesn't let journalists try out a vehicle, or at least even just experience that vehicle, I have problems. A lot of people were critical when we went to the Lucid Air ride-along. Oh, well, they didn't let you drive it. But we got to drive it.
We eventually did, yeah.
We've gone to see the Aptera and ride in that. And we've been promised a drive at some point in the future when the vehicles are ready.
Can I say we've actually driven a Byton?
Yes, we've actually driven...
Possibly the only functional Byton, we've driven it.
Well, I mean, it's going to come to market soon, right? Mm-hmm. After it comes out from the dead. And on that note, we are done for the day. So I think that probably wraps up our day, guys. Thank you for watching. I know this is a slightly longer version of 10. Apologies again for the lack of B-roll. we've been so busy, we just haven't had a chance. We don't normally get everybody out of the office at the same time. This won't happen again until CES. But thank you for putting up with me on the road trip.
The silence says a lot.
No, it actually has. It has been a delight, and we, again, apologies that we don't have things together, but we have, in the last 4 days, we've driven 1,700 miles in 2 different electric vehicles
And interviewed multiple people.
Yeah, at multiple companies.
Winter has been not feeling very well, unfortunately, and so several team members have not been getting a lot of sleep, and so it's been kind of a challenge.
What's sleep?
Yeah,
Right,
What is
exactly.
the sleep you speak of?
I am very lucky. I am someone who basically gets so exhausted that I just fall asleep every night. And other team members do not have that luxury. But before we go, I would like to thank the Electric Auto Association for sponsoring today's show. They've been advocating for vehicles since 1967 and firmly believe that our future depends on us going electric today. You can find out more by heading to electricauto.org, where you can find out how to become an EV educator yourself, find local EV meetups that you can attend, depending on what your local COVID restriction laws are. And of course, you can also gain access to the Colorado Clean Energy Credit Union's fantastic EV loan and green energy loan program. So if you want to put solar panels on your house, you want to buy a new EV, you can get a loan through that great program. And it's a great way of, from a financial point of view, using a credit union far better than using one of those big old banks. And also you get to support a great charity as well. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the subscribe button and the like button and the bell button. Make sure you do the same for our other channel, which is Transport Evolved Take 2. And if you want to support us through Patreon, Ko-fi or Bitcoin, please do consider it, as well as buying some swag from our swag store, including this lovely t-shirt that Kate and I are both wearing different designs, all done by the wonderful Erin, who is currently standing behind the camera. Also, we've got our new video editor coming on board, and we would really appreciate it if you could help us out by sending us some money every month. Just $5 a month. If everybody who watched this video spent $5 a month on supporting us through Patreon, if you can, we would be able to not only keep our new video editor employed, but also maybe get a new studio again now that we're coming, hopefully, fingers crossed, out of COVID restrictions. And we'll be able to make more great content. We won't be quite so stressed. We won't be doing stuff like this all the time, but we will be able to make more road trips and do more challenges. This trip hasn't been cheap, and thanks to you if you are a Patreon supporter, because without you, we wouldn't be able to do it. Thanks for joining us, and as always, keep evolving.